I don't think it's any surprise if I say Netflix is trying to heavily invest in One Piece. I mean, it's very obvious. They're doing the One Piece live action, which one of the Netflix executives had said will run for 10 seasons, and also they're the ones responsible for with studio undertaking the One Piece remake, which we learned in the director and assistant director's announcement video that came out way back. So it is obvious what Netflix is trying to do. They're trying to strengthen their hold as the #1 streaming service by developing exclusive long-running IPs such as One Piece, which is a very smart move. I mean, that's how they came to be a powerhouse in the streaming industry. It's not only because they were the first ones to do it, but also the fact that they had multiple long-running shows such as Orange is the New Black, House of Cards, Friends, and etc. By developing their own long-running shows and also streaming other networks and studio shows like Friends, Netflix was able to have a strong foothold in the industry, and Netflix hasn't forgotten this. Netflix knows the importance of having long-running shows streaming on their service, and they have many projects that are in development, and one of them is One Piece. And the thing with One Piece is that unlike an original content which is riskier for them to undertake, One Piece is a guaranteed success because they've already taken the risk of making a One Piece live action and seen that it is a success, and it is obvious that a remake of One Piece will generate massive amounts of buzz because the One Piece IP is massively popular and beloved around the world. So it is no surprise when Netflix swiftly ordered a full season of the remake of the East Blue Saga exclusively on their platform, which is a very smart idea. But here is my question: how the hell is Netflix going to adapt this behemoth of a story? Because I believe Netflix are 100% invested in this whole One Piece project. So when they say they're planning 10 seasons of the live action, I believe them. But the thing that makes me question their conviction to adapt both the live action and the remake is the lack of urgency on the rate they're coming out. It's about to be a 3-year gap between the first season of the live action and the second. By this rate, if they're serious about getting to 10 seasons, it's going to take 30 years to get to season 10. By that point, Inaki Godoy, the actor for Luffy, might be eligible to play the injured old man in Thriller Bark without any makeup and prosthetics. So even though I trust that Netflix are wholeheartedly dedicated to having a long-running exclusive One Piece content on their platform such as the live action and the remake, it is kind of puzzling to understand how they'll achieve it. I mean, I could sort of understand it for the remake because they don't have to worry about actors getting old and all that. The problem I have with how they're going about adapting the remake is that I just wish Wit Studio put all their efforts into the One Piece remake so we could get it quickly at a consistent rate. I don't want to see Wit Studio taking on a mediocre project like Moonrise, because it would be at the expense of delaying the One Piece remake. And for people that say Netflix has such massive gaps of release dates for One Piece because they don't care much about it and have no urgency releasing it, I beg to differ, because the One Piece live action is not the only casualty of this. We have massively popular Netflix shows such as Stranger Things where there is massive gaps of time between releases, and you know Stranger Things is a very precious property for Netflix and is still having massive gaps of release dates between seasons. So what is causing all this? Why do shows like the One Piece live action take a long time to release new seasons? Well, that is mostly due to the scale of these types of shows. The One Piece live action is going to have massive sets that will be built and insane visual effects, especially now since the story is going to be in the Grand Line where we have Chopper to adapt, the giant story in Rocky, and the insane geography of islands such as Drum Island, Whiskey Peak, and Little Garden. That's going to take some insane visual effects in order to get them right, and it also needs to be given time so that they could properly execute this feat. So looking at it from this perspective, we can understand why Netflix is taking a long time to release the live action. So the question arises, will Netflix be able to adapt the whole of the One Piece story if they're going to be going at it with this pace? And my answer is leaning more to yes than than no. I see this because even though the actors may age and not be eligible to play the roles, they could kind of be flexible about it to accommodate the live action. We all know the first half of the One Piece story, from the East Blue Saga to the post-Marineford arc where Luffy decides to take 2 years for training before going to the New World, takes place in a couple of months. So instead of the live action strictly abiding to this rule, they could just make the first half of the Grand Line a 10-year journey, and that way seeing Inaki, Makenyu, Jacob, Emily, and Taz getting older throughout the run of the show will seem natural. The last thing we want is the show trying to convince us actors that are in their late 30s and early 40s are a bunch of teenagers. That would not be good. And another option is just replacing the actors with younger actors. And I think this may be a less popular option, since in these types of situations the audience gets attached to the actors looking a certain way, so when they are replaced it would be jarring. Also, in this day and age where social media is rampant, fans get attached to the actors, so seeing their beloved actor whom they like getting replaced might be upsetting. I personally don't prefer this option because a show did this once and it had some fans dropping the show because of this, and that show is House of the Dragons. In House of the Dragons first season, the show changed its main cast halfway through because there was a time skip where the characters become adults. When that happened, I remember some people who couldn't watch the story any longer because of it. So imagine if One Piece live action replaces its main cast to keep the characters young. It would be even worse because we would have followed them for 4 or 5 seasons by then. So it would be really off-putting to change actors and make us believe they're the same characters. So I really don't want them to go this route. And the other option is technology. As new technology are coming out these days, it might speed up the process of production and we might not need 2 to 3 years gap between seasons. And the thing I'm talking about might get me crucified, but I'm just going to say it. I'm talking about AI. I'm not a fan of AI, especially when it comes to them being used in creative artistic works, but we're seeing Netflix flirting with AI every day. We're seeing articles like Netflix starting to use a startup runaway AI video tools and many more. So Netflix is definitely flirting with the use of AI, so they might see the wide release date gap between their shows and use it as an excuse to speed up production for some of their shows. I'm not a fan of this option, especially because it risks leaving creatives behind, and I also feel like it will kill the motivation for people to try and make better and better effects, like how CGI was meant to be used initially to enhance effects, but instead nowadays it is fully relied upon, and that's why we get so many shows with CGI slop in them. So using AI is not my favorite option, but I feel like Netflix is going with another option that I don't really like, and that is cutting some parts of the story to reach the hype parts of the story, and that way they would not worry about the actors getting old. And I'm not a fan of this again because I want the story to be told properly as Eiichiro Oda wants it to. Oda and showrunner Matt Owens are the ones fighting with Netflix executives for One Piece to be adapted the proper way. They are the ones who convinced Netflix executives to adapt the Little Garden, Drum Island, and Whiskey Peak arcs. If it weren't for them, we would be going straight into the Alabasta arc after season 1. But something unexpected happened that is leading me to believe that Netflix executives got their way, and that is the departure of Matt Owens from the One Piece live action team. And I'm not gonna lie, this has me a bit worried. The only consolating thing about this is that it said in the article that came out for the reasoning of his departure was for him to take a break. I would have been way more worried had he left for creative differences, because had he left because of creative differences, you know that means Netflix is going to do whatever they see fit with the live action adaptation with little regulation from Matt Owens and Oda, because Oda and Matt Owens were the ones who were fighting for the faithfulness of the adaptation to the manga. Every decision that fans didn't like about season 1, such as Garp having a heavy role in East Blue, were ones that were not approved by Oda and Matt Owens and needed some convincing to implement implement them. So I hope Matt Owen's leaving doesn't mean they're going to stop consulting Oda throughout the process of adapting the live action. And for the One Piece remake, Wit Studio better not take mediocre projects like Moonrise at the expense of delaying the One Piece remake. If you've made it this far into the video, please consider subscribing to the channel. Also, don't forget to leave a like, and with that said, see you guys in the next one.